another episode of Live the African Dream podcast. I am your host, Eunice Ajim, and today we have Foluso Ojo. She is the co-founder and chief operating officer of truQ. truQ is automating and optimizing short-haul and intra-city logistics for businesses across Africa. truQ is also a portfolio company of Ajim Capital, and I am super excited to have Foluso on the podcast today. Foluso, how are you doing?
I'm doing very great. It feels so good to finally be on this other side, having this conversation, considering the fact that I've followed your podcast for quite a while, listened to some of your podcasts. So, it feels good to finally be here, actually.
Oh, that's really great to hear. We're gonna dive right in. So I think if I'm going to be super honest, one of the things that really captivated me with truQ was your story alongside Williams.
Yeah.
I have built marketplaces, so I think I first understood the challenges of building and scaling a marketplaces, but also some of the things that you guys have done as founders to be able to scale your company. I would love to hear a little bit about you, your story, your background, where you come from, and what led you to launching truQ.
Okay, so I have my background in project management, events as well, and actually help businesses to, aside from handling events, also move bulky and sizable items across different locations in Nigeria. So, though I had like difficulties in moving large items at my previous job, but I wasn't thinking it's something that I actually want to leave my job and go and solve. My co-founder Williams Fatayo on his own end was also working with one of the biggest digital banks here in Nigeria, and he also had to do with, coincidentally, also had to do with moving brand items from the headquarter in Lagos to other branches in Nigeria. So most of the time when we get together, we usually talk about our frustrations at our job, including challenges that we're having with logistics. But again, we didn't think that was like a sign to actually just go there and solve this. The eureka moment for us was sometimes in 2019. I got my first apartment, and I needed to move a piece of furniture to my new apartment, and I just thought, okay, this should be as easy as an Uber. I'm just going to hop online and try to get a vehicle to help me to move this item. I was utterly disappointed, actually. For 3 days I was trying to get the right plug, asking people around, and I just couldn't find a vehicle that worked for me at the price that I had at that point in time, based on my budget, actually. And then by the fourth day, I finally found a vehicle. I had to go with the price at that point in time because I had no other option. The experience was very shitty. I did enjoy it for like, and I thought I even paid more than what I could have actually paid. And I just came out of that experience with a clear determination that, you know what, this is the height of you, right? No one should ever go through this same frustration with moving bulky or large item. And at that point in time, we had already gone through these frustrations at our previous job. So this was more like, okay, this is it, right? We have to go out there and solve this problem. And we didn't even start like immediately. We had to do like a survey of individuals, of businesses, just trying to understand that we are not alone in this. And the results that we got from that survey again gave us more perspective and understanding into the problem and the challenges that people and even businesses are having. And then based on that survey again, we then embarked on another journey of getting the data of people, drivers, vehicle owners that have vehicles in different sizes that we want. So we traveled across different locations in Lagos, Nigeria, um, getting locations where these vehicles are, collecting all of their data, and then uploaded all of these on an Excel sheet. And then we went on our social media platforms, right? Now we have the supply. Then we need to look for the demand, which is the people that actually want to move. And then we just went on our social media platform, letting people know that when they need to move bulky or large items, we are the go-to person for that. And we kept communicating that. And then on the 6th of January, the first call came. Someone needed to do move an event item, and then we're able to help them to do that. And then based off on that experience, we'll go on to do 100 strips, no product, no app, just off Excel, and then at every point in time, just getting feedback as to what the customer wants, how they want us to build the product, and based on that, we kept iterating to everything that we have. Our truck right now has been based on one step at a time, trying to understand what the customer wants, what their needs are at every point in time, and then iterating as we journey on.
Wow. And this was like what, in 2019 or 2020?
2020.
Wow. And with COVID and everything happening, how was business? Like, how did things go in 2020 with just, the pandemic and everything happening? And we're going to go back into the details, but I just want to better understand how you guys were able to overcome that particular situation.
Okay, so during COVID, I think we had, before COVID, I think we had launched like, I think 2 or 3 months before COVID. So, I mean, when COVID happened, there was no pressure. We hadn't resigned from our previous job at that point in time. We were still doing this by the side. So, if there was no pressure, we don't have salaries to pay. It's just okay whenever. And then at that point in time, most of the clients that we had at that point in time were also individuals. Right. So, and the individuals at that point in time, because everybody were locked down, they were also not moving. So we're just like, okay, at that point in time, we just focused on the products, right? What do we need to build, just so that when the lockdown is over, we know that, okay, we've already went far ahead on building the product to a certain extent. So that was more what we were focusing on doing during the COVID period.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah. And what a beautiful story on how to launch a startup, right?
Yeah.
Like, I always hear founders say, I have an amazing idea, but I can't push my idea because I need funding to make that idea happen. I think what you all did was a good example of like, hey, like, let's start with spreadsheets, right? Let's find all the supply, put them on the spreadsheet, have them on call, and then let's go out there and find the demand. And then, as soon as you have a call from a customer, you know exactly who you need to call. And if they're not available, you call the next guy until somebody gets on the phone and is willing to go deliver the goods. I think, and then like slowly understanding, okay, what are your problems? What is failing? How can I iterate? How can I pivot? How can I improve the product to make this better? For any listener that is out there that's like, I still don't get what is truQ, right? Any investor, any potential customer, just for the audience generally, what would you say truQ does in a very short paragraph?
Okay, so we're becoming the operating system for third-party logistics in Africa right now. And in simple, clear terms, we connect businesses and individuals to different sizes of vehicles that are closest to them in real time, alongside a portfolio of other value-added services.
Okay, well, that was very quick and very
Yeah.
easy, and that makes sense. Uh, but it sounds super easy and super great, but every single startup and every single business come with your own challenges. Currently, what would you say has been one of your biggest challenge as you've gone through this journey of making it easy to connect a driver to a customer and a business, and how have you guys overcome that challenge?
Okay, so there's been a lot of challenges along the way, right? At some point, again, because it's a demand and supply market. So at times you have demand that are more than supply, and at times supply are more than demand. So it's more like it's never balanced sort of thing. So I mean that's some of the problem that we face along the way, and then we've also tried to kind of like also iterate as we move on. So right now, what some of the things that we're currently trying to figure out at this point in time is actually figuring out how do we want to go with our supply in a very scalable manner, because we've also understand the fact that to a very large extent is a supply it's a supply led market, right? When you have this, I mean, the demand is already there, just figure out the supply, and then you're good. So right now we're at the point where we are trying to get introductions to asset financing platform, just so that why, because the peculiar, we serve a very peculiar industry that are
Yes.
growing at a very fast pace, right? So again, we also need to be able to figure out our supply to make sure that while demand is growing, we also have enough supply to be able to power this demand. So right now, that's what we're figuring out. And then as we journey on, some of the challenges that we are also trying to figure out is to make sure that at every point in time, again, because we're still a startup, right? I wouldn't say that we figure it out 100%, but you know what? If you continue to focus on the customers at every point in time, just to understand exactly what they need, and you continue to build products around that, you continue to build value added services around that, we then continue to iterate based on that. So that's also what is going to be our focus along the way, just to make sure that we are building alongside what the customer wants.
No, I love that. And that is super important because at the end of the day, you have to keep listening to your customers. You have to keep listening to what they want. And if they are very happy and satisfied with your product, they will stick around for the long term.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit and speak a little bit about you and your co-founder. First, it is a very challenging thing to find the right co-founder when building a startup. I was watching Williams' WhatsApp probably like a few days ago, and it was both of you guys at dinner,
Yeah.
and he mentioned that one of the best ways you guys have been able to like minimize conflicts as co-founders is just having monthly dinners. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, like that is super interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of that, and it's unheard actually. So I just wanted to ask, how has it been working with a co-founder? What advice would you give any founder out there that is building their startup? It is great to have a co-founder, but sometimes a co-founder can break or make your company.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I the first thing I'm going to say actually is start a startup with your friend, right? And then
Yeah.
make sure that you guys have like complementary skill sets. Because I mean, if the only thing that keeps you and your co-founder together is just the company, at some point it's going to get so difficult that the only thing that will be able to keep you guys through is just the friendship, not actually the startup itself. Because startup can be, the journey itself is not defined. It is very challenging. It is very difficult. Conflicts will come between the founders. You guys will have dividing interests, dividing even business strategy as to, I mean, we are all different individuals with different background, different culture, different sort of belief. And here we are trying to do something together that has to be done in a very unique, one single way, because you cannot we cannot have two different ideas on how we want to go or how the journey should be. It has to be the same thing. And then the fact that we are all thinking in different ideas, different perspective to everything. So I think the first thing that I would say is make sure that before the company even starts, before you even get together and say, you know what, let's start a company, this person is your friend. You guys are just very good on like a very neutral level. And then this person is not just someone that you picked up like yesterday or like last week, and then you're trying to do, because it's more like you're doing life together. This is more like us trying to build a life together until maybe even death do us apart, right? So you want to be sure that this person you're committing a large part of your life to is someone that you actually trust, right? And then the second thing is you also want to be sure that you have like complementary skill sets with this person, right? Because initially when we started truQ, it was we didn't actually sit together to say, okay, so I'm going to be the CEO, and then you're going to be the COO, and then you're going to be this, and I'm going to be that. I mean, it was just very natural for us to kind of like just grow into what we are better at or what we are good at naturally, right? I'm good at, operations, people management, managing emotions, customer service, and all of those things. And it's just naturally good at sales, brand and marketing, leadership, strategy, in that line. So it was just very natural for us as well to just kind of like flow into those complementary skill set that we have, and then we just kind of like grow into it. So I think it was even until recently that we just started having conversations as to, okay, I think you're stepping in my lane, or I think you should focus more on this, or while I focus more on that. And that has been very, very helpful. Then the third thing that I'm going to say is when you eventually start the company, you guys are going to have a lot of issues, right? And I think that's also one of the major reasons that a lot of startups fail. So
Yeah.
you want to be very proactive about that and make sure that you guys are having like ongoing feedback conversations, right? I mean, there were some points like you mentioned that Williams and I used to have like conflicts, like my co-founder and I used to have like conflict like back to back, like almost every time that we need to make major decision as a company,
Yeah.
right? And then it got to a point, I think about 4 months ago, we started meeting just once a month just to understand, okay, what have you done this last month that I am proud of? What do I think that you need to improve on? And that feedback has been very helpful to kind of like understand things from his own perspective while you understand things from my own perspective as well. So now when we need to make decision together, we're not making a decision from my perspective or his perspective. We're making decision together from a point of, okay, I understand where you're coming from. You understand where I'm coming from. And then right now there we are at this junction. What is better for the company? Putting into perspective, both of our perspective and also for every other person across the table to make decision at every point in time. I think that feedback has been very, very helpful, and I think it's just something that a lot of founders need to emulate. Like, apart from building the company together, I think a lot of time we're also very focused on just wanting to build the company and get to the next level, and then we tend to kind of like forget the fact that we also need to nurture the relationship that we both have as founders, just to make sure that apart from the company, we also are good friends, right? We can also talk to ourselves about, challenges, what we're going through in our individual lives, what I need to do to support my founder, my co-founder, what he needs to do to support me. So having all of these conversations, all of these feedback mechanism system into play can also be very, very helpful in helping founders to go through the conflict phase and come out of it even better.
Woo. You said so many amazing things. And I love to bring up the founder and co-founder questions, especially with all my portfolio companies, because it seems like I don't think I have a portfolio company that is a solo founder yet.
Okay.
Every single one of them have a co-founder, and I always love to understand what are the dynamics between you and your co-founders, because I've been there. I've been a solo founder and I've had co-founders, right? And it is inevitable. Founders have conflicts for one reason or the other, but being capable of being friends. Somebody said, I think in the last podcast with one of my other founders, he said that being a co-founder, especially like if you have multiple co-founders, it's like knowing that you're marrying into multiple spouse, right? And you technically see your co-founder sometimes even more than your personal spouse, right? So you have to be able to like have really good communication skills, be willing to have empathy and a lot of being capable of to empathize with the other founders, like let them speak. I mean, there are just so many other amazing things, and I'm so glad to hear that you guys are figuring out, and you've given amazing feedback to any founder that is out there and considering bringing a co-founder to the table.
Yeah, and I think I also like to add that like you said, just following up on what you said, right? Starting a company is more like two couples that are trying to raise a child together, and
Yeah.
startup is more like raising a child, because especially at the first 2 3 years, it's more like a baby that is very very needy and needs attention at every point in time, like need your full attention. So if you're going to be raising a baby with someone, then you both need to kind of like nurture your relationship to make sure that you're even helping that baby to grow. And I mean, if you look at it from an angle of a marriage, it makes it look easier, because if you're like in a marriage and then you want to try as much as possible to make sure that you and your spouse, you're going on frequent dates, you're giving yourself feedback, you're listening, you're communicating, you're making decisions together. When you look at it from that angle, more like, okay, it's more like we're married, but we're trying to raise a child. It makes everything easy that way. When it's not like you're trying to compete with this person, you're trying to complement this person, just so that this other person can bring his or her skill set, you can bring your own skill set to the table, and you guys can marry that together and build something really really great and amazing. And I think the last thing I also say about that is the fact why co-founders relationship is even more important, and also a very great determinant to how the success of the startup is, because I usually say that startup is more like you're in a battlefield, right? Because you don't know what battle you're going to face tomorrow. Like, you're competing against literally everything. You're trying to deliver a new product, you're trying to raise fund at the same time, and everyone just needs like a part of you, right? So you want to make sure that a person that you're going into battlefield, that you guys are good, you guys know what your strengths and weaknesses is, and then on the battlefield you won't have time to kind of like tackle each other. You just want to make sure that you're complementing each other as much as possible.
No, I love that. I love that. So now that we have a good understanding of who you and your co-founders are, I wanted to bring in a little bit back to truQ.
Yeah.
So we have a good understanding of how you have been able to like manually grow the business with very minimal MVP. I think truQ is definitely at the stage where you have a working product. A lot of your supply and demand are using your platform. At this stage, what does scaling or growth looks like for truQ?
Okay, so at this point, growth to us means three different things. Number one, growth to us means diversifying in terms of the customer segments that we have. So right now, most of the customers that we have play majorly in the category of B2B and B2C e-commerce companies. So we're now at the point where we are diversifying into other segments like construction companies, platforms, FMCGs. So being able to handle all of this different industry with their different needs at every point in time is just at a point, it's just the next stage of growth for us. Then the other segments of growth would then be our expansion plans. Right now, we've gone into expanding into two other, apart from Lagos, in addition to Lagos, into expanding to two other cities in Nigeria, Ibadan and Abuja to be precise. So, growth for us means expanding to other cities across Africa, capturing major cities in Nigeria as fast as possible and growing and scaling up as fast as possible. Then the other segment of growth that we are also focusing on is becoming the operating system for third party logistics in Africa. So when we started truQ, we started more with a B2C approach, right? We started focusing more on individuals. And at some point, we pivoted to mostly B2B, servicing mostly businesses. And then also we then transitioned to being a platform that connects demand to supply, businesses to different sizes of vehicles that are closest to them in real time. Then right now we've also noticed that, I mean, over time, with being a platform, especially this year, we focus majorly on building complementary solutions and services to the customers that we serve. We notice that our customers have complementary challenges like cash collection, and then we had to launch a service that solves that challenge, cash collection and remittance as a service. Then later on, we also noticed that our customer also have issues with reconciling items that are going out of the warehouse, right? In and out of the warehouse, in and out of the various warehouses. And then we also launched another complementary service, in transit management, as a service to solve that problem head on. So right now we're at a point where we also been able to a very large extent, like you mentioned, automate end to end for the clients that we service. And then we then realized that businesses that we service, we are automating end to end of their trips, but they also have, we are third party to them, right? They also have other micro third party that they're working with. And the implication of that is, while we truck are committed to making sure that we're automating and optimizing their logistics, they also on their own end are not able to automate end to end their third party logistics, because they then deal with other micro logistic companies that they have to run manual with and also run Excel with. And we realize the fact that that manual process is very, very highly inefficient. So right now we're transitioning to becoming an operating system, not just for businesses, but even for other third party logistics in Africa, in such a way that for the businesses that we service, they can be sure that as soon as they have us, their third party can be automated end to end. And the implication of that is customers, and the implication of that is we are then transition more into a SaaS, in such a way that we are now charging our customer based on value based pricing, not just in terms of the trips that we are making possible for them, but also in addition to all the value added services that we're providing them. And then they can now cherry pick, of course, based on what works for them at every point of their business. So right now, I wouldn't say that we've gotten transitioning into an operating system. I wouldn't say that we've gotten it figured out 100%, because even right now we're also looking at enterprise expert that can help us to figure out how to do the pricing, the process, and all of that. But I mean, for us, that's like the next step of one of the next step of growth that we're working on.
Wow. That is amazing. I love how, like, I asked you one question, you answer all the following questions in one of them, and I don't have to worry about asking anything else. But I think you gave a good understanding of what truQ does, a good understanding of like what is next for you. I think I hear this a lot, especially as an investor in the US, in terms of, oh, what is happening in Africa? Like, why are you investing in African tech startups? And I love bringing people like yourself and some of our portfolio companies, just so that they can have a good understanding in very simple terms. Amazing things are being, like decentralized and, really like digitalized on the continent. Things that seems very super simple have been done manually for such a long time. And the younger crowd and the new generation is wanting to change that. Like, we want to see a better Africa. The whole part of this podcast is all about living your African dream.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that I bring on the podcast are people that are accomplisher, right? Like, they're not just dreaming, they're going out there and actually building. In your own words, what would be your version of the African dream? And I think I posted something on my Twitter recently, which people are still answering, is, what problem would you solve on the continent if you were guaranteed success but had to work on it for the next 20 years? What would that be?
Okay, if I have to work on it for the next 20 years. Well, I think that this problem that I'm actually solving, which is digitizing the third party logistics in Africa, is a lot of work. And I think that between now and the next 20 years, I'll also be committed to solving this problem, right? And for me, it goes beyond just Nigeria. It's trying to solve this same problem and replicating it across different African countries. Right now, we have operations in Nigeria. We also have plans to scale into, West Africa, another South African from next year, South African country next year. So this problem is big enough, right? And for us, we just want to get to that point where we want to dominate, right? It's not just about solving this problem in a very small way, but also to even dominate the sector in such a way that the third party logistics in Africa that is being heavily dependent on manual processes right now, to a very large extent, we are automating that process from end to end. And in that process, we would then become the biggest operating system for third party logistics across Africa. Just so that whatever country you're moving to on the African continent, you're hearing the name of truck at every point in time when it comes to logistics. For us, that's exactly where we want to be. And then talking about the next and 20, between now and the next 20 years, right? Logistics is so big. And the other interesting thing is when you then look at logistics in Africa, you then realize that there are also very complementary challenges as well that right now we're even facing at different point in time. So at some point in time, I also like us to then transition into solving complementary problems, right? Right now, we are very focused on the mid mile segment, right? Because when you look at logistics in Africa, you have the first mile, you have the last mile, and then you have the middle mile. So the middle mile segment is where we're currently dominating. But who knows what's going to happen between now and the next 20 years? We might have to also dominate the first mile, also dominate the last mile. Like, logistics is huge. Like,
Yeah.
it's huge. It's going to take even more than 20 years to actually be able to even figure it out, end to end. And then we're committing to just doing that as long as it takes.
Wow, that was so beautifully said. Foluso, it was such a pleasure to have you on the Live the African Dream podcast. It seems like I would love to have you back again in a year or two where we can speak a little bit more about some of the successes, right,
Yeah.
that has happened since we last spoke. But thank you so much, everyone. You can find a little bit more and learn more about truQ on mytruq.com, I believe so.
Yes, absolutely.
And yes, and you can find Foluso on all media platforms on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And until next time, this was Live the African Dream podcast, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.